Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, class 7. I hope you all are safe and sound at your homes. As you guys know, we have started the chapter The Yellow Phase from our second periodical, and today we are going to proceed our reading from the page number 145. We already discussed in the Zoom session about the characters and the story and the plot. So let's proceed towards the reading. Kindly take out your book and open page number 145. So first of all, I'm going to read the pages from your book. The page number is 145 and first paragraph. Where have you been, Iffy? I asked as she entered. We have started the story where we have stopped in the last Zoom session. She gave a violent start when I spoke. It gave me a chill to see her sulking into her own room and wincing when her own husband spoke to her. I don't wonder that you are surprised, said she, trembling. Why, I felt a longing for a breath to fresh air. I stood at the door for a few minutes. All the time she never once looked in my direction. It was evident to me that she was saying that was false. What was it? Why she was concealing? I should have gone to the city that day, but I was too disturbed to pay attention to business matters. My wife seemed to be as upset as myself. We hardly exchanged a word during breakfast, and afterwards I went out for a walk, and I was back in Norbury by 1 o'clock. My way took me past the cottage, and as I passed, the door suddenly opened, and my wife walked out. I was struck dumb with astonishment at the sight of her. She seemed for an instant to wish her to shrink back inside the house again, and then she came forward with a very white face and frightened eyes. So said I, this is where you went during the night? What do you mean? She cried. You came here, I am sure of it. Who are these people that you should visit them at such an hour? I have not been there for. How can you tell me what you know is false? I cried. Your voice changes as you speak. I shall enter that cottage and I shall probably the matter to the bottom. Moving towards the page number 146. No, Jack, for God's sake, she gasped. As I approached the door, she seized my sleeve and pulled me back. I implore you not to do this, Jack, she cried. I will tell you everything some day, but nothing but my misery can come of it now. Our whole lives are at stake on this. Her words arrested me. I will trust you on one condition only, said I at last. It is that this mystery comes to an end from now. Preserve your secret, but promise me that there shall be no more drinks which are kept from my knowledge. I was sure that you would trust me, she cried. It shall be just as you wish. Still poking at my sleeve, she led me away. As we went, there was that yellow lipped face watching us out of the upper window. What link could there be between the creature and my wife? For 2 days I stayed home. My wife appeared to be abide by our engagement, but on the third day I had ample evidence that she had broken our promise. I had gone into town on that day, but I returned early. My wife was not at the home. Tingling with anger, I strode into the cottage. I did not even knock, but turned the handle and rushed into the passage. The house was deserted. The furniture and the pictures were of the most common and vulgar description, save in one of the chamber at the window of which I had seen the strange face. That was uncomfortable and elegant, and all my suspicions rose into a fierce breeze that when I saw that on the mantelpiece stood a photograph of my wife, which had been taken only 3 months ago. Later that evening, I asked my wife about that photograph. Until you tell me who is that have been living in that cottage, there can never be any confidence between us, said I, and left the house. That was yesterday, Mr. Holmes, and I have not seen her since. I now place myself in your hands. Holmes and I had listened with the utmost interest. My companion sat silent now, lost in thought. Tell me, said he at last, you appear to have been disagreeably impressed by the face in the window. It seems to be an of unnatural color and to have a strange rigidity. How long it since your wife asked for the money? Nearly 2 months, said by Mr. Monroe. Have you ever seen a photograph of her first husband? No, there was a great fire after his death, and all her papers were destroyed, replied Mr. Monroe. And yet she had a certificate of death. Yes, she got a duplicate after the fire. Did you ever meet anyone who knew her in America? No. Thank you. I should like to think over the matter now. Now let's proceed towards the page number 148. Return to Norbury. If the cottage is inhabited, do not force your way in, but send a wire to my friend and me. We shall be with you within an hour of receiving it. I am afraid that this is a bad business, Watson said, my companion letter. I would not have missed the case for worlds. You have a theory, yes, a provisional one. The facts are, as I read them, are something like this. This woman was married in America. Her husband contracted some disease she felt from him, returned to England, changed her name, and started her life afresh. She had been married 3 years and believed that her position was secure, having shown her husband and the death of certificate of some man whose name she had assumed, when suddenly her whereabouts was discovered by her first husband or by some unscrupulous woman who had attached herself to him. They write to the wife and threaten to come and expose her. She asks for £100 to buy them off. They come in spite of it, and when the husband mentions to the wife that there are newcomers in the cottage, she knows that they are her piercers. She waits until her husband is asleep and then tries to persuade them to leave her in peace. Having no success, she goes again next morning. Her husband meets as she comes out. She promises him then not to go there again, but 2 days afterwards she makes another attempt, taking with her the photograph which had probably seen demanded from her. She warns them he might go to the cottage. He does go, but finds the place deserted. What do you think of my theory? It all surmise, but at last it covers all the fact. At present we can do nothing until we have a message. Now it's time for the explanation of these pages. As we already discussed that Mr. Monroe had visited Holmes as he was great disturbed with his wife, he's hiding a great secret from him. And although Holmes doesn't normally deal with the domestic issues, the detective allows Mr. Monroe to expand on the case. Monroe's wife, Effie, had been previously married in America to a lawyer by the name of John Herban. Effie, though, had been left a widow when her husband and daughter had contracted with yellow fever, so Effie had come to England. Monroe was a relatively well off businessman and his business doing relatively well, but Effie was also financially sound with legacy from her deceased husband paying 70%. Effie thought had insisted that her own money being signed over to her new husband. Then, 2 months before Monroe's consultation with Holmes, Effie had asked her husband for £100 and also asked her husband not to ask what it was for. Shortly afterwards, Monroe notices that the cottage next door to his Norbury property and he goes to see if the new occupations require any help. Monroe only sees a Scottish woman who is quite adapted with him, but then afterward he also sees a strange yellow face at the window. So the face quickly disappears. Monroe discovers that his wife has secretly visited the cottage, and when Mr. Monroe was about to enter the cottage, his wife, if he implores him not to go, if he promises that she will never return to the cottage, but it's a promise quickly broken. Discovering the deceit, Monroe breaks into the cottage to find out about the occupant and the yellow face that appears at the window. When he gets into the cottage, though, Monroe finds it empty, although he does find a picture of his wife on the cottage mantelpiece. At the wit's end, Monroe had then decided to consult with Sherlock Holmes. After listening to the problem, Holmes simply advises Monroe to return home and find whether the cottage is now occupied again. Now let's proceed towards your assignment. Question number 1 and question number 2 from books, page number 153 is your assignment. If you have any query or any problem, so you may ask in my personal window.